Our next speaker will be April Love from Alcorn State University, the socially disadvantaged farmer and rancher policy research center. I'm sorry, speaking about the miscellaneous title. Also, the 1890 Land Grant University's Research and Extension title, Title VII. And I think for those of you who know the Farm Bill well or just getting into it, there's so much in miscellaneous. And when we teach the Farm Bill at UC Berkeley, we always say, look at miscellaneous first, because that's where all kind of stuff is hidden, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So don't be turned off by the name miscellaneous, because there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. And I'd like to welcome Ms. Love up here to begin her presentation.
Our areas of focus at the Policy Center are stakeholder engagement, active research, policy development, and strategic outreach. When it comes to stakeholder engagement, we have an advisory board for our Policy Center. The Federation is a part of our advisory board. They help us make wonderful decisions and help us with our policy recommendations, especially from their members and the concerns of their members. But the community-based organizations, agribusiness, and other agricultural leaders, like Mr. Lloyd Wright, who is retired from the Office of Civil Rights at USDA, he really assists us in ensuring that socially disadvantaged farmers are put first when it comes to our policy recommendations. Y'all see me? I'm going through this PowerPoint. I'm staying on task. Okay. We do continue to expand our partnerships at the Policy Center, Extension Risk Management Education Centers, the 1890 Universities Foundation, which is where I pulled and will be giving you the 1890 policy recommendations from. Those come directly from them and the concerns of the 1890 land grant institutions. The Southern Rural Development Center at Mississippi State University, so we do work with 1862s as well. We have our law centers, Harvard Law School, Vermont Law School, and Southern University Law Center, which is an 1890 law school. The Mississippi Center for Justice has worked with us on heirs property, and we currently have a rather large project with Walmart, their Center for Racial Equity, conducting research on access to credit for Black farmers in 8 or 9 states across the nation. And then we also utilize Jackson State University for policy analysis and research. We also work with Tougaloo College, John Deere, and the Tenney Group. They assist us with tax information for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers and financial planning. We also work a lot with the Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement at USDA. When it comes to our strategic outreach, and I will also touch on that a bit when I get to our policy development section as well. We do facilitate education and technical assistance. One of our bigger projects right now is this heirs property curriculum development and train the trainer that we have been working on. We have done the training in 2 states so far. We started in Atlanta. We recently, in February, were in Washington, D.C., Crystal City. And we did the train the trainer workshop before the Agricultural Outlook Forum. And we have an overview, prevention, and resolution section, but it's training minority serving institutions and sometimes community-based organizations on the best practices and tools and techniques for heirs property. And that was developed in partnership with Mississippi State, Vermont Law School, and just tons of other organizations, Federation. Dania and I were on the same team when we were developing the curriculum. We do have our database, our national database of Black farmers, and our outreach includes newsletters that go out to our entire database, and that includes farmers and ranchers, as well as our podcast and webinars for policy education and updates, and those come out monthly, and those touch on subjects like what is the Farm Bill? And heirs property, what is heirs property? And we bring in experts on that. Our next episode will be on urban agriculture and focusing on that. And it's designed so that you can watch it at your computer or on your TV, but also for farmers and ranchers so they can put in their headphone and stick their phone in their pocket and listen to it while they're working on their land. So our research is focused on policy research that impacts socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. We currently have 6 priority areas. Our original areas were the impact of current agriculture policy on socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, land loss amongst African American farmers, participation in USDA programs, and access. It used to be access to and use of technology, but now it is access to and access to resources, which includes access to capital, access to credit, and access to technology. We have since added youth programs and pipeline to our research area. We are gearing up to issue a request for proposals for research on that. And then community and urban agriculture, we currently have 1 active research project going on with urban agriculture right now, and we do have some preliminary research that was done by Vermont Law School. When it comes to our policy development, the way that we do it, we host these, and I don't like to call them listening sessions. I guess I can call them discussions, but to be simple, they are listening sessions, and they have spanned from May of 2021 until pretty much now. And what I've done is I bring together these farmers and ranchers from different regions, or, since then it's just been like, come if you can, whoever you are, and we usually do them on Zoom. And first what we did was we ran the research by them. And we said, is this research capturing your issues and challenges? And if it wasn't, we went back to the drawing board, and that's how we ended up with additional research areas. After we had finished with our research and actually developed our preliminary policy recommendations, we had more listening sessions. And we said, do these recommendations capture your issues and challenges? And if they didn't, we were like, okay, we need more research, or we need to go back to the drawing board, we need to add some stuff. But we don't, put forth recommendations that don't actually capture those issues and challenges of farmers and ranchers or rural communities. And so we've done that. We are going to have more listening sessions to discuss the actual Farm Bill and pending legislation that will affect socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers going forward, and to ensure that they are updated and in the know of what is going on and what is going to affect them. The way that we do our recommendations, we send them to the Congressional Black Caucus, the House Agriculture Committee, the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, and we do send them off categorized by the titles of the Farm Bill. However, we have our own areas of priority that differ a bit from our research areas, and so those include racial equity, and those will include things like justice for Black farmer, the farm credit system, and the FSA county committees, and disparities in funding between the 1890s and 1862s, heirs property, youth and agriculture, urban agriculture, and food insecurity. I said I was going to come back and discuss a little bit more of outreach that falls under the policy development area. So we do have the Benny G. Thompson Leadership Institute, and it is hosted by Tougaloo College. And what it does is it focuses on providing leadership training and developing leaders to do grassroots work in the Mississippi Delta. And it focuses on critical leadership skills to prepare participants to network and understand local and state government, create nonprofit organizations, and engage in conflict resolution. And so our big focus there is local elected leaders, so that they have an understanding of how the political process and leadership process works. So diving into our 2023 Farm Bill recommendations. Again, we have heirs property and land loss, youth programs, racial equity is the big one, access to credit and capital, 1890 land grant institutions, and urban agriculture. When I pulled some of our research, our policy recommendations today, again, I did not pull all of them. We would be here all day. But I did want to focus in on the 1890 land grant equity, and even with some of these recommendations I'm going to give that are policy center specific are in the miscellaneous title, but some of them can go into other titles as well, and we place them there. So starting with the 1890s, give me one second. Starting with the 1890 land grant institutions. Most of the well-funded land grant universities are still predominantly white. and they are the 1862 institutions. There was a delay in funding for 1890 land-grant institutions. They were not provided research and extension funds until 1977. The 1862s received research funds authorized by the Hatch Act in 1887, and it was 90 years later for the 1890s. The 1862s received extension funds by the Smith-Lever Act in 1914, and it was 63 years later for the 1890s. When the 1862 institutions were first established, they were provided with millions of acres of land, and they were able to raise, just to date, like with inflation, just a very large amount of money for their 52 universities. But when the 1890s and the 1994 institutions were established, they were pretty much provided with nothing. And those inequities still exist today. The 1890 land-grant institutions support socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. And if they do not have equitable access to resources, they are unable to support those farmers and ranchers and people in their community. So the 1890 land-grant recommendations were to reauthorize the Centers of Excellence, reauthorize the Evans-Allen Research Act and increase the authorization level from 30% to 40% of Hatch, reauthorize the 1890 extension and increase the authorization level from 20% to 40% of Smith-Lever, reauthorize the 1890 Capacity Building Grants Program and the 1890s Facilities Improvement Program, reauthorize the scholarships for students at the 1890 institutions and include flexibility for staff support. And this is their big one. Remember, I got these directly from the 1890 Foundation. Eliminate the waiver application and make all federal funding contingent upon states granting 1862 institutions and 1890 institutions an equal percentage of matching funds. If it cannot be eliminated, they would like to shift the burden of submitting the waiver to the states, requiring them to demonstrate why they cannot meet the matching requirements for federal funding for the land-grant institutions in their state. And they would like to require USDA to withhold federal funds from funds authorized under provisions in the Farm Bill, which authorize capacity grants until the state submits a waiver explaining why they cannot meet the matching requirements for the 1890 or 1862 institutions. So they came very hard with their what they want to create an equitable space for their universities. On the policy center side, how am I doing on time? Oh, okay, cool. I'm almost done. So I want to start by saying, and this is generally what we lead with when we start discussing our racial equity recommendations that come directly from the Policy Center in our research, is that from 1868 to 1934, the federal government gave away 246 million acres of farmland and 160-acre land grants to over 1.5 million white families. These land grants became the source of wealth. Wealth in improving the land, wealth in agriculture production, business creation, investments, and continuing, these same white farmers were able to utilize USDA loans, subsidy programs, grants. However, Black farmers were denied this assistance historically, and they faced discrimination from USDA. And even when they've tried to speak out against these discriminations and injustices, they have been ignored or dismissed, oftentimes systemically. This discrimination by the federal government, coupled with like the discrimination that they face in their communities as well over time, has pretty much decimated the population of Black farmers specifically, and I'm sure other population of socially disadvantaged farmers as well. And so that is kind of where we were going when it came to our Policy Center specific recommendations, and I'm high level here. These are not all of them, but these are some big ones. So the first one is to eliminate FSA and the FSA and county committee and transfer the functions performed by the county office employees to a full federal system. The next area is to eliminate the use of the term historically underserved producers and limit the use of the term socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. We did not say eliminate the term, even though I understand that most people who fall in that category don't want to be referred to as socially disadvantaged. But as I mentioned to Dania a few times, there's a lot tied up in that terminology. And we don't want our farmers and ranchers to lose anything by getting rid of that terminology. We prefer that, you know, when using that term, you also dig in to describe the group of individuals by their racial or ethnic or gender, what they prefer to be referred to as, and to use that to describe the racial, ethnic, or gender prejudice that they've been subjected to, and to use that to basically define the targeted services or benefits that they need. So still keep the term, but not just use that term. Like, let's break it down a little bit further to see what farmers of color actually need within their own identity. And we discussed that at Berkeley a lot. I was excited about that. Further on the terminology, when the term socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers is used, it should be based on the 1990 Farm Bill definition. I think we discussed that as well. I'm not even gonna go any further with that. The next area is to require the Secretary of Agriculture to implement Section 14006 of the 2008 Farm Bill. That requires a compilation of program participation data. We categorize that as transparency and accountability. And then the last high-level recommendation is to fully implement the Justice for Black Farmers Act of 2023. And we went over that at Berkeley as well, but basically these reforms within this piece of legislation would pretty much end a lot of the discrimination within the department, and it would protect the remaining Black farmers from losing their land. And I think, as Dania mentioned, it's not just for the Black farmers. It doesn't just benefit them. It benefits pretty much all farmers of color, or even farmers who, based on their gender identity as well. Once one population is assisted, it can trickle down to everyone else. And so that is all I have for you all. I do have my contact information if you need it. And I am happy to share our full catalog of policy recommendations or research with anybody who might want it. Thank you very much.